Thank you. I'm very honored to be here to represent ASOR CHI, which many of you know is a cooperative agreement between the American Schools of Oriental Research and the U.S. Department of State, which is designed to document, protect, and preserve the cultural heritage of Syria and northern Iraq. The program has three major objectives, which are to monitor and report on the crisis, to promote global awareness, and to develop damage mitigation projects to implement now and post-conflict. One of the primary objectives of ASOR CHI is to raise awareness. We produce biweekly reports to document current incidents that have unfolded since our project began in August 2014, which utilizes a range of sources, including information from Syrians and Iraqis, open source information from social media and news outlets, and academic publications and high-resolution satellite imagery. In our first year, we reported 711 heritage incidents in Syria and another 80 in Iraq. The damage is widespread, clustered around sites exposed to looting and within proximity to active conflict zones. The aim of our reports is to provide a comprehensive analysis of the heritage crisis, which also means trying to cut through the hype. Our first year, our data does show that the majority of the damage is the result of looting, digging, and combat, as you can see here. We attempt to provide a contextualized and nuanced analysis of the situation on the ground to better inform policymakers and law enforcement. And much of this sensitive data cannot be made public. This effort is especially important in our antiquities trafficking studies. The public discussion regarding this antiquities trafficking involves ISIL as the main perpetrator and big-ticket items being sold in auction houses. However, our data show that all belligerents are involved or complicit in the antiquities market, specifically harvesting artifacts for sale. This is somewhat dated map shows the major zones of control with the green circles representing looted sites. The circle size denotes the intensity of the looting given the site sample. And so while looting is ubiquitous, the satellite imagery demonstrates that most of this is intense in ISIL-controlled areas. The corresponding documentary evidence contextualizes this activity as highly organized to the point of bureaucratic regulation. Simply, we know more about ISIL, and therefore, we talk about it more. And here we see another map created by Susan Pinacho, a geospatial analyst who shows the intensive looting of classical and Byzantine period during Europos, which was discussed earlier by Dr. Bewley. And so while much of the looting did occur prior to ISIL's capture of the region, once ISIL entered the area, our sources indicate that they acquired many of the caches of looted antiquities and absorbed most of the criminal gangs involved there previously. Overall, the pattern suggested by the geospatial evidence points towards for the looting of sites of classical and Byzantine periods, given the demand for such material on the markets and the ease for which the provenance of such material can be masked or laundered onto the illicit legal market. These sites are also susceptible to rapid looting using metal detectors, which is a favorite technique that we've learned. And so ASOR CHI receives information from our in-country sources on the economics of the trade and maps the internal market bureaucracy. These photographs, which many of you probably have seen before, were provided to us by many of our sources in Qamishli. These images represent just a sample of the type of objects we are seeing trafficked. Most of the material we are observing are low to the middle end of the market, and this material is not difficult to find and document given that dealers are using digital photographs and social media to reach prospective buyers all over the world. ASOR CHI is also tracking the trade spatially by looking at smuggling routes that move all types of contraband. ISIL and other terrorist groups are involved, around here. This is actually Tel Abyad, which is located at a very vulnerable point at the Syrian-Turkish border. And this indicates a time period when ISIL had controlled the area from 2014 to early 2015. And as you can see here, many of the border breaches and footpaths that resulted and grew over time as ISIL was smuggling contraband out of this area into Turkey. And so multiple dollar estimates have been cited for illicit antiquities market and what proportion of this market funds ISIL terror. Scholars and pundits and many other colleagues associated with ASOR CHI have reacted with skepticism at these dollar amounts, asking for the evidence to back up this claim, and rightly so. But much of the information that we receive, and this is just a case study, I'm interested to hear if anyone else is dealing with this situation. We receive it from confidential in-country sources. Some of these participants are actually active in illicit activity, potentially working within smuggling organizations and looting gangs. A few are deeply involved in criminal organizations, including ISIL, and we may not even know some of the real names of our interlocutors. We have photographs, eyewitness accounts, documents, and satellite imagery, but we cannot publicly release all these data. If we were to do so, it could potentially put our sources at risk of arrest, injury, or death. And as researchers, we're stuck at an impasse. We're in possession of data that would enlighten these discussions, but not at the expense of the safety and well-being of the vulnerable individuals who took great risks to inform our work. And unfortunately, that restricts the public data set to satellite imagery, ground-level photography of looted sites and overland trafficking routes, photographs of objects in transit, social media, items on the open market, and materials seized by law enforcement. Effective and responsive policy should be informed by evidence. But how do we, operating at the intersection of cultural property and war crimes, reconcile the fact that a significant subset of data cannot be used as evidence for public discourse? The hard truth is that even if we did make this information that we have publicly available, we still would not have enough accurate data to reconstruct the exact market figures that would satisfy those concerned with dollars and cents. But the study of antiquities trafficking does not suffer from a lack of evidence. The data we do have demonstrates the scale of the problem, and we can accurately state that cultural property crime contributes to financial benefits and serves as a valuable mechanism for social control in the conflict area. And we also know that it's even feasible to even if it were feasible to reconstruct the dollar amount for each individual armed non-state actor, what exactly would we hope to gain from this figure? Perhaps instead we should be asking different research questions, ones focused on understanding behavioral adaptation and how to respond to it. Why did ISIL go to such great lengths to regulate the trade of cultural objects, and why have other groups not employed similar regulatory methods? What actors are acquiring these objects and from where? How are objects moving from the conflict zone to the international market? And how does this practice compare to other illicit commodities? Seeking answers to virtually impossible questions, the dollar figure chimera allows those with an vested interest in proliferating the market to divert attention from the facts, specifically that looting is funding and proliferating terrorism and a horrific cycle of ethno-sectarian warfare. Our challenge as researchers is to develop and recommend solutions to these real humanitarian concerns with the facts that we see before us. Thank you. So I hope this spawns some discussion.